Spencer, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, Paul, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Let's start with what we mean by the West. We don't mean cowboys and Indians or just the Western U.S. What do you mean by the West?
I know when I told somebody I was writing a book called How to Save the West, they said, oh, that's great. I love John Wayne movies, which I've always remembered because, right, that's not the West that we're talking about here. What we're talking about is the cultural inheritance of Athens and Jerusalem, these kind of two great pillars of our civilization. One of them, the pagan philosophies of Greco-Roman antiquity, and the other one, the monotheism and the scriptures of Judaism and Christianity. And the point of the book is simply that these great traditions of the past, which come down to us, have something to say to the present. The kinds of questions we face every day, the profound issues that are raised about, what is man's place in the universe and how should we live? There are answers to those questions that come down to us from these great traditions. We are not the first people to ask those questions or grapple with them, and we ought to make use of the vast wisdom that comes down to us, because otherwise, we're left reliant on the modern gurus who usually don't have very good answers to these sorts of questions.
Are those two traditions more similar than they are different?
Yeah, that is a great question, and you and I are not the first to ponder it. I mean, the Christian tradition especially has always asked whether pagan wisdom is inside or outside of the tradition of the faith, if you catch my drift. I mean, on the one hand, these guys were not Christians, people like Aristotle and Plato, and they came from a completely different background that emphasized, human reason and what the Greeks called the logos. But on the other hand, what's kind of miraculous is that when Paul, preaches his sermon on the Areopagus, he's talking to the best and the brightest of ancient Greek philosophy, the Stoics, the Epicureans. And there's this amazing moment where he starts to evangelize the Greeks, and he's reaching for their very philosophy, Stoicism, especially when St. John says that in the beginning was the Word. He's saying something that a Greek philosopher could really have understood, that there is a logic and an order that threads through all of creation. It's not just a kind of mechanistic, lifeless order. It's the order of a divine mind. And so even though, of course, there are all sorts of differences in between these different parts of the tradition, there's also a kind of amazing continuity that suggests there's something deeper here than just coincidence, but a really profound set of truths that is accessible in all times and places.